The Battle of Fort McHenry is famously known as the battle that inspired the United States national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, to be written. But why did this battle happen in the first place, and what made it significant? The Battle of Fort McHenry was fought during the War of 1812. Although the United States wasn't originally a part of the war, they were just bystanders. Great Britain was at war with its longtime enemy France. A man named Napoleon was currently trying to take over all of Europe. This event is called the Napoleonic Wars. The British did not like the idea of one man ruling Europe, so they launched an attack to stop him. The United States comes into play because they were aiding France during this war. They were trading with them and sending goods. So naturally, this upset the British and saw the United States as an enemy for aiding France. In response to France's aid from the United States, Great Britain started a naval war with the US. They took over trading ships and seizing men on board as prisoners of war. Capturing these men benefited Great Britain in two ways. First, they gathered men to help them win the war, and second, they limited the goods being sent to France. Britain's efforts to overthrow Napoleon were successful, although now they were at war with the United States. The US was able to stand up to the British military during the Napoleonic Wars because Great Britain's efforts were all focused on France. But now that the war against Napoleon was over, all war efforts shifted to the United States. With the hope of freeing American war prisoners from the British ships, a man named Francis Scott Key was sent to negotiate with Admiral George Cockburn. They previously settled an agreement that the prisoners on the ship would be traded on a 1-to-1 ratio. One American traded for one British prisoner. When Francis Scott Key boarded the ship, Admiral Cockburn explained that there would be no need to exchange prisoners and they would all be freed by the next day. He told Key that the British had planned to bombard the fort. 1,000 Royal Navy ships were 2 hours from arriving at the Chesapeake Bay. The Navy would fire from the bay on Fort McHenry. The ships were loaded with cannons and ready to begin attacking once commanded. Key pleaded with the admiral to not carry out the ambush. It was compiled of families and children. Cockburn explained that he had already informed the commanding officer, Major George Armstead, of the bombardment that would be taking place, but he gave the Americans a way to surrender. He told them that if they lowered the American flag that stood tall above the fort and replaced it with the British flag, then the British Navy would halt its fire, because that would mean the Americans had surrendered. As day turned to night, the American flag remained, and the British launched its attack. For 25 hours, the British Navy fired cannons at the fort. Francis sat on board the ships with all the prisoners below. The men frequently asked if the flag above the fort was the British flag, but Key's answer was always no. When dawn reached, the prisoners asked once more if the flag above the fort was still the American flag, and to Key's astonishment, there stood the American flag, tattered and burned on a bent pole, but still stood regardless. The men on the fort fought tirelessly for those 25 hours, and no matter what, they did not let that flag fall. It's recorded that the flag was hit directly many times, but still stood. The Battle of Fort McHenry was a turning point for the United States during the War of 1812. Great Britain was known for having the most powerful navy in the world, and yet the tiny force on Fort McHenry was able to stand its ground against the Navy. Francis Scott Key wrote a poem about the events that took place on September 12th through the 13th of 1814, and it became the national anthem for the United States of America.